50,000 people. One stadium. Complete silence. Not the kind that follows a brilliant winner down the line, not the kind that holds its breath before a championship point. This was different. This was the silence of an entire crowd suddenly forgetting why they'd come. A 19-year-old from Manila had just leaned toward a German ball kid during a changeover and started speaking to her, fluently, warmly, completely naturally, in German. Not a rehearsed phrase. Not a polished media moment. Just a conversation, the way you have one with someone whose language you actually know. And Berlin, this city with more tennis history packed into its walls than almost anywhere else in Europe, just lost it. Phones up. Strangers grabbing strangers. A woman in the front row pressing both hands over her mouth like she'd just seen something she wasn't ready for. And somewhere in the dignitary section, Steffi Graf, 22 Grand Slams, the greatest German tennis player who has ever picked up a racket, went completely, utterly still. That stillness is everything. That's the whole story sitting in one person's face. Because when someone like Steffi Graf freezes, you pay attention. She has watched this sport from every angle imaginable, as a champion, as a legend, as someone who has seen more extraordinary moments than most of us could count. She does not stop like that for nothing. So before we talk about what that moment meant, before we even get to Berlin, we need to go back to where this girl came from, because nothing about what happened on that court makes sense without understanding the road that led her there. Manila, 2005. Alexandra Eala is born into a family that already understands athletic excellence at a level most people only read about. Her father Michael played professional tennis, and when he watched his daughter move around a court as a young girl, he didn't see someone who might be decent with the right coaching. He saw something rarer and harder to name, the kind of talent that almost punishes you for leaving it undeveloped. So the family did something that takes a particular kind of courage and conviction. They sent their teenage daughter across the world to Spain. Not to a holiday camp. Not to some casual summer program. To the Rafa Nadal Academy in Manacor, one of the most demanding junior development environments on the planet, a place where 12-hour training days are not the exception. They're just Wednesday. Where the culture is built on the understanding that discomfort is not a problem to be managed, it's the whole point. Where the kids who survive it come out shaped differently than everyone else, and the ones who don't still leave changed in ways they'll carry for the rest of their lives. Eala didn't just survive it. She became one of the best junior players in the world. She won the Junior Australian Open in 2022, then turned around that same year and won the Junior US Open, making history in the process, the first Filipino athlete ever to win a Grand Slam title, at any level, junior or senior. First ever. In a country of over 100 million people with a deep and genuine love for sport, nobody had done it before her. And she did it without the machine that usually surrounds a story like this. No massive sponsorship apparatus, no institutional PR team building a narrative around her. Just a girl from Manila, training in Spain, winning in New York. But here's what almost every article written about those titles managed to overlook. While the tennis world was watching her ranking climb and tracking her match results, something else entirely was happening underneath the surface, something that had nothing to do with her serve or her footwork or her ability to read an opponent's patterns. She was becoming someone genuinely shaped by the world she'd traveled through. The Nadal Academy doesn't operate in one language. Coaches switch mid-session. Players from dozens of countries share courts, share meals, share the specific exhaustion of pushing yourself past the point you thought you could reach. The environment demands a kind of social fluency that goes well beyond tennis. You either learn to meet people where they are, or you stay inside a very small circle. Eala chose the former. During her years competing across Europe, she spent real time in German-speaking countries. Not passing through. Actually being present. Listening. Absorbing. Nobody gave her a language requirement. Nobody told her it would come in useful. She just paid attention to the world around her, the way people do when they're genuinely curious rather than strategically calculating. And by the time she arrived in Berlin for this tournament, she wasn't arriving as an outsider politely visiting someone else's culture. She was arriving as someone who had quietly, without any announcement or fanfare, made herself at home in it. Berlin had no idea. It was about to find out in the most unexpected way possible. Here's something worth understanding about the changeover in professional tennis, because casual fans often miss what it actually represents psychologically. On the surface it looks like nothing. Players sit down. They drink water. They towel off. 90 seconds pass. The ball kids do their jobs at the edges of the court, efficiently, invisibly, as designed. Nobody really looks at the ball kids. That's almost the entire job description. Be useful. Be invisible. Be forgotten the moment the point starts again. Eala was deep into the second set of a tightly contested match. The crowd had been warm throughout, engaged in the way Berlin tennis crowds are, knowledgeable, appreciative, alive to the quality of what they're watching. A young German ball kid, maybe 14 or 15 years old, came to Eala's end of the court to collect a towel. Standard procedure, the kind of exchange that happens 100 times a day at every professional tournament in the world. Most players don't register it. They're inside their own heads, thinking about the next game, managing their energy, processing whatever just went wrong or right. Eala looked up, and instead of the automatic half-smile, instead of the blank professional courtesy that the moment called for, she spoke. In German. Warm, casual, conversational German. The kind you use with a person, not the kind you perform for a room. The ball kid's face was caught on multiple cameras from different angles, and every single one of them tells the same story. The surprise hit first, that split-second adjustment when your brain registers something completely unexpected. Then it gave way to something that looked like pure, uncomplicated joy, a grin wide enough to reach people sitting rows away. And then the crowd started catching on. The people closest to the exchange heard fragments of it first. They turned to the people beside them. Those people turned to the people behind them. The understanding of what was happening moved through that stadium in a wave, each section catching it a beat after the one before, and when it arrived at the back rows and the upper tiers and the standing sections, the sound that came back was not polite applause. It was an eruption. Sudden, total, the kind of noise a stadium makes when something happens that nobody was prepared for. Not a spectacular shot, not a championship moment, but a human moment. The kind that bypasses every filter and lands directly in the chest. And Eala's reaction to all of this might be the single most important detail in the entire story. Because she looked around at those 50,000 people on their feet, and her expression, caught clearly on camera, was somewhere between genuine surprise and quiet amusement. As if the thought hadn't actually crossed her mind that speaking naturally to a teenager would cause this. As if the whole thing had felt completely obvious to her, and she was now mildly, almost tenderly puzzled by everyone else's response to something she considered entirely unremarkable. That expression is what broke the crowd completely. Because here's the thing about authenticity in a world that has become extremely sophisticated at recognizing performance. People feel the difference, even when they can't articulate it. Even when they're not consciously looking for it. What 50,000 people felt in that moment was not a media-trained athlete deploying a charm offensive at a strategic moment. It was someone who had simply done the natural thing and genuinely hadn't seen it coming that the natural thing would stop a stadium cold. The clip was already moving through social media before the next game had finished. Not through official tournament channels, which were still broadcasting the match. Through personal accounts, fan pages, the informal network that sports culture has built over the last decade to catch what the broadcast misses. The hashtag Eala German started trending in Germany within an hour. Filipino fan communities, already some of the most passionate, organized, genuinely dedicated supporter groups in women's tennis, amplified it globally within 90 minutes. The numbers climbed with the specific velocity that only happens when something needs no translation, when it crosses languages and cultures and time zones and lands exactly the same way for every single person who encounters it. German fans wrote about a feeling they struggled to name, something between disbelief and unexpected pride in a Filipina player they just met through 30 seconds of footage. Filipino supporters wrote long, emotional paragraphs about what it means to watch someone carry your flag into spaces that weren't built for your story and simply behave as though they belong there, because they do. Tennis writers who would normally keep their focus locked on the competitive narrative shared the clip anyway. Because some moments override editorial instincts. One comment cut through everything else with its economy. 7 words. She didn't have to do that. That's the whole thing compressed into a sentence. The most powerful gestures in human connection are almost always the unnecessary ones. The ones that cost nothing in any practical sense but reveal something true about the character of the person making them. Eala could have sat in silence for those 90 seconds. She could have stared at her strings and thought about the next game. She could have done exactly what every other professional on tour would have done, treating the ball kid as part of the background of the moment, not unkindly, just professionally. She chose instead to see a teenager doing an invisible job in her own city, in her own language, and to meet her there, in that language, on those terms, without a single thought for what it might look like to the people watching. Now we have to sit with what Steffi Graf's face actually meant. Because that expression wasn't simply a reaction. It was a verdict delivered by someone qualified to give one. Graf built her legacy across 15 years at the absolute pinnacle of this sport, 22 Grand Slams, the only player in history, male or female, to win each of the 4 majors at least 4 times, 377 weeks as world number 1. She has been in and around professional tennis for decades now. She has witnessed extraordinary performances, historic matches, moments that will live in the record books as long as the sport exists. She is not someone who freezes easily, which is why the footage of her face is so remarkable. What she wore in that moment wasn't polite appreciation. It wasn't the measured approval of a former champion watching a talented young player develop. It was something older and quieter than that. Recognition, the specific kind that only comes from having spent a lifetime at the highest level of something and suddenly seeing in another person the quality that separates the genuinely significant from the merely exceptional. The understanding that greatness at the game is only half of what makes a champion matter. That the other half lives in how you see the people around you when there is absolutely nothing to gain from seeing them. Graf spent her career as an ambassador for tennis almost by default, through dominance, through discipline, through the sheer gravitational weight of what she achieved. What she watched Eala do in 30 seconds was something she recognized at a cellular level, because she has spent enough time at the top to know that the scoreboard only ever tells part of the story. A 19-year-old chose presence over preparation. Connection over comfort. She saw an invisible person and made her visible, in public, in front of 50,000 people, without trying to, without even realizing she was doing it. You cannot teach that. It is not on any academy curriculum anywhere in the world. That is character, arriving fully formed in someone who is barely old enough to vote. And a woman who spent the better part of a decade ranked number 1 in the world recognizes character when it stands in front of her. So what does this actually mean? Not for the match, not for the tournament, but for the conversation this sport keeps circling back to about who belongs in it, whose story gets told, which faces appear on the billboards, which countries receive the investment in junior development that produces the next generation of champions. Eala's entire presence in professional tennis is a quiet challenge to those questions. She came from a country that had never produced a Grand Slam champion at any level. She trained on another continent. She learned languages nobody asked her to learn. She showed up in Berlin and spoke to a teenager in her native tongue not as a statement, not as a calculated act of soft diplomacy, but as a reflex, simply as an expression of who she has always been. And in 30 seconds, she made 50,000 people feel something they hadn't come to a tennis court expecting to feel. She made them feel like the sport was larger than they'd understood. Like there was space in it for more kinds of stories, more kinds of journeys, more kinds of champions. Steffi Graf went still because she understood what she was watching. Not a spectacular shot. Not a ranking milestone. Not a carefully constructed public image moment. She was watching the future arrive, quietly, without announcement, in the gap between 2 points, through a conversation between a 19-year-old and a teenager whose name nobody in that stadium knew. Alexandra Eala didn't plan any of this. She didn't rehearse it. She didn't calculate the ripple. She just saw a person and spoke to her. And that, more than any title she's lifted, more than any ranking she'll reach, more than any match she'll win on any court in any city in the years still ahead of her, is the thing that will make this sport remember her name long after every score has been forgotten.